We're nearing the end of double game week 34 with one match remaining, and a score of 90 points minus 4 has seen another drop down sadly to 141k. Not where I want to be at this stage of the season. There was disappointment in defence with David Raya and Kieran Trippier each conceding a single goal, as their teams came from behind to beat Nottingham Forest and Southampton respectively. Newcastle rank 4th best for expected goals conceded per game during the game week. Only Brighton, Man City and Man United have fared better as it stands. The late decision to bring in Mo Salah has narrowly paid off for now, but he came in at the expense of Bruno Fernandes for a hit, and the United man is yet to play his second fixture. In almost comical fashion, Brighton midfielders Solly March and Karu Matoma both saw their minutes managed in an emphatic 6-0 win over Wolves. Diogo Jota was somewhat fortunate initially to avoid a sending off against Spurs and go on to score a last-minute winner, but he picked up another knock in the process, restricting him to just 7 minutes off the bench against Fulham. So let's move on to the transfer plans for game week 35. I had hoped to roll the free transfer this week, but rotation concerns over Jack Grealish and Diogo Jota could force me into a move. Grealish has made 15 consecutive starts in the Premier League and looks firmly at risk of dropping out for a rest ahead of Real Madrid in the Champions League midweek. There is a chance we get early team news filtering through on Saturday morning. Typically, as you know, I try to lock in my final team an hour before the deadline, but I might have to make an exception on this occasion if there's a strong possibility of some early team news for Man City, given how significant that could be not just regarding Jack Grealish but also Erling Haaland. So perhaps I'll add some caveats for what I might do if, for example, we hear Haaland is on the bench or Grealish is starting. I'm happy to keep hold of Grealish either way. For double game week 37, it'll just be a case of whether to start or bench him for this particular round. Jurgen Klopp revealed that Diogo Jota picked up yet another knock in his short cameo against Fulham and continues to nurse a bad bruise around his ribs, so it looks like he may have to settle for a third successive cameo against Brentford. If we were to hear news of Grealish starting against Leeds, I'd be happy to play him, and that would enable me to bench Jota and roll the free transfer. But if we hear the opposite, or we don't get any news at all, my plan will be to sell Jota for a Newcastle forward. But it's a big call in deciding between Callum Wilson or Alexander Isak. The benefit of rolling a transfer this week is that you delay that decision until double game week 36 itself, and take in as much information as possible. I'm unlikely to sell Sven Botman for a hit to fit in both forwards, so whichever one I buy will almost certainly be my captain in game week 36. Callum Wilson has been in the form of his life since returning from injury, scoring 8 goals in 7 appearances, 5 of which were from the bench. Isak has scored 4 goals in that period, starting in 5 of the 7 matches. In terms of expected goal involvements per 90, Wilson has averaged a figure of 1.47 in that time, compared to 0.64 for Isak. But the question is whether or not his superior threat when on the pitch compensates for his lower expected minutes. The pair lined up together for the second half against Southampton, with Wilson down the middle and Isak on the left, and it's possible we could see that more often in the remaining matches of the season. So because of that fact, and because I probably need to gamble if I'm going to challenge for the top 100k, I'm leaning more towards Callum Wilson. I should mention that Julian Alvarez could be an alternative option to replace Jota, but I'm less keen on him after Pep Guardiola hinted at a possible return for Kevin De Bruyne. If the Belgian is available, I'd expect him to get minutes under his belt for rhythm ahead of Real Madrid. Even if Alvarez were to start ahead of Haaland, I'd still prefer the Newcastle forward route since it saves you a transfer the following game week, and I'd prefer to captain Salah rather than Alvarez in that scenario. So all that being said, the plan is to sell Jota to Wilson unless there's any last minute Grealish news to suggest otherwise. And here's how the team is set to line up. It really shouldn't be a dilemma between Raya and Kepa this week, with the former facing Liverpool at Anfield, but Chelsea's recent form makes it a more difficult decision than it ought be. Whilst I expect both to concede, it's Kepa who has the higher chance of a clean sheet for me, so he gets the nod. Liverpool have produced 10 goals and 15 big chances in their last 4 matches, compared to 8 goals and 8 big chances for Bournemouth. The rest of the squad is fairly straightforward to decide, with an unchanged back 3. Pervis Estupiñán has fashioned 15 attempted assists in home matches since the World Cup break, with Trent Alexander-Arnold and Kieran Trippier the only defenders to produce more. Brighton host an Everton side that have scored 4 goals in their last 4 matches. Only Fulham and Chelsea have netted fewer. The Toffees have conceded 9 goals in the same period, with only Arsenal, Leeds and Spurs shipping more, which bodes well for the well-rested Karu Matoma and Solly March. March has carved out 6 big chances in home matches since the World Cup, trailing only De Bruyne and Fernandes among midfielders. Marcus Rashford has notched 2 goals and 3 assists across his last 4 matches, to average 8.5 points per game. Over the last 6 game weeks, only Ebere Eze has landed more than his 9 shots on target among midfielders, and only Salah has been afforded more big chances than his 7. West Ham have given up 14 big chances across their last 4 matches, only Nottingham Forest and Spurs have fared worse. Mohamed Salah has found the net in each of his last 7 outings at Anfield. With 8 goals and 2 assists in that time, the Egyptian has averaged 10 points per game. He's produced league best figures of 33 shots in the box and 8.8 expected goals in home matches since the World Cup. Joining potential new signing Callum Wilson up top will be Ollie Watkins, who's amassed 6 goals and 1 assist in away matches since the World Cup, averaging 6.1 points per game. No forward has fired more than his 13 shots on target in that time, while only Haaland can better his 10 big chances. The Norwegian is the standout captaincy option at home to Leeds, in the absence of any early team news to suggest otherwise on Saturday morning. Personally, I'd say it's more likely he starts the match and comes off early once the game is wrapped up, like we saw against Leicester recently. Leeds have shipped 13 goals in their last 4 matches, with only Spurs conceding more. But in the event that Haaland was named on the bench and we got the news ahead of the deadline, I would swap the armband to the very capable Mohamed Salah.